The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith was published in 1776, the same year as the official start of the American Revolution. It was also the same year that Thomas Paine would publish Common Sense and push the age of revolutions forward for the next few decades. Thomas Paine was born in England in 1737, and his early years were, as historian Eric Foner put it, quote, a period of unrelenting failure, end quote. He ran away from home at the age of 16, couldn't hold a job, went through 2 marriages. It wasn't until the 1770s in England that Paine would turn towards Enlightenment-era thinking. It was in the taverns with religious and political dissenters that Paine would meet Benjamin Franklin, who was looking for fellow radicals to support the growing movement in the British colonies in America. Franklin would push for Paine to immigrate to Philadelphia in 1774. He would quickly find his place in this revolutionary atmosphere and start to write for the Pennsylvania magazine under several pseudonyms. He would attack Britain for, quote, ravaging the hapless shores of Africa, robbing it of its unoffending inhabitants to cultivate her stolen domains in the West. He would argue for the ending of the slave trade and the freedom of slaves. He would formulate social welfare programs that could provide young married couples with, quote, a reasonable sufficiency to begin the world with, end quote, and a program similar to our modern social security system to protect elderly people from destitution. As the American colonies were quickly militarizing for an armed revolution from Britain, fellow revolutionary Benjamin Rush would suggest to Paine to write a pamphlet for support of independence and a Republican government. Common Sense would sell 150,000 copies that year in the colonies. And by the way, Paine never took a dime from that. All proceeds went towards the revolution. And it would be the spark that obviously ignited the American imagination about a just republic. Historian Harvey J.K. detailed how John and Abigail Adams wrote to each other when Common Sense was first published, about a wave of revolutionary fervor amongst the young college students, slaves, and women, all of which deeply concerned the founding father John Adams, especially because his wife was one of those swayed by Paine's work. Late in 1776, Paine would write The American Crisis to inspire the troops as the war started. It began with the famous line, "These are the times that try men's souls." Penn would act as the secretary of the Congressional Committee of Foreign Affairs until he denounced Silas Deane and Robert Morris for trying to profit off the revolution. This would lead to his expulsion from the Congressional Committee in 1779. He would work as General Nathaniel Greene's aide-de-camp for the next few years. In 1780, he would publish his next work, The Public Good, where he called for the land west of the 13 colonies to be for the government and the people, when people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Richard Henry Lee, the ancestor to Robert E. Lee, and others wanted the land to be owned by the Virginia Company, a company they respectively had ownership in, of course. Paine would leave for Paris in 1781 to successfully seek funding for the revolution and to get away from the animosity of the growing political establishment. The revolution ended just a couple years later in 1783. Paine would go on to help overturn the State Assembly of Pennsylvania from exclusively landowning white males to, quote, a one-body assembly with universal manhood suffrage, says historian Harvey K. Paine was in conflict with the Federalists, even though he was in favor of a stronger federal government. John Adams and the Federalists feared the tyranny of the majority, or as Karl Marx would put it nearly a century later, the dictatorship of the proletariats. Paine feared the tyranny of the minority more, which is why he had a vision of popular sovereignty. That was the solution to governance issues. He viewed institutional checks on the sovereignty of the people as a threat to liberty. Paine became disinterested in the formation of the bourgeois liberal government in the United States and decided to focus on public works and inventions. So Benjamin Franklin asked Paine in 1787 to gather funds in Europe for a bridge he wanted to build in Philadelphia. Paine would travel to London first to look for funding in the heart of the Industrial Revolution that was going to change the world forever. Paine would travel to Paris as well, and while traveling back and forth between London and Paris, he saw the rise of the French and Haitian revolutions.